This is TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Welcome to TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents. I'm your host, correspondent Derryn Wong. Every week, my colleagues and I break down a business story that matters. Today, we're ground control calling Major Tom. We're going to get 12 days of training, have big explosions in the background while walking in slow-mo, and get into a rocket, because we're going to space. I'm betting most of you don't know that Singapore actually has a thriving space industry, but it's been around for decades, and it's getting better. Now we're going to take a look into its origins, how it's doing, and why we could be poised for blast-off in the future. Joining us here in the control center today, we have the perfect person to explain all this to us. He's the Executive Director of Singapore's own Office for Space Technology and Industry, or OSTIN, Jonathan Hung. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Derryn. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
So tell us a bit about your own background and how you came to helm the office.
I started my career with the EDB, Singapore Economic Development Board. It's a very, very exciting environment, daring to dream and coming up with the idea of pushing the boundaries of space. It started off as a very small office that we set out back in the 2008 or 9 period. That led actually to the formation of AUSTIN, Office for Space Technology and Industry, that was pushed off in 2013.
Okay, so more than a decade actually, AUSTIN's been around.
Yes. So AUSTIN kicked off its first iteration then, and over the years, its mandate has expanded with more resources to support a more established ecosystem that we can also build upon.
I've probably watched, too many movies, but it's correct to call AUSTIN Singapore's own space agency, right? It's like our NASA.
I guess so. It's no one else.
Right, yeah.
So we are happy to claim that.
That's interesting. But what exactly does AUSTIN do?
So AUSTIN actually is Singapore's lead front for all space activities. Within AUSTIN, we are organized into 3 main pillars. We have a technology arm that covers a lot of our engineering, space technology master planning, our satellite missions. We cover industry as a second pillar, which is very important. We have a very vibrant space ecosystem, about 70 companies within the space sector, 2,000 professionals, and we work together to also attract companies from overseas to establish operations in Singapore and bring our companies overseas. The last pillar is on international relations and policy, very critical as we build nodes and partnerships around the world. Space, as you well know, is very collaborative.
Okay, AUSTIN's been around for more than a decade. What about Singapore's space journey? How did that begin and where are we now?
Actually, Singapore's space journey started quite some time back. We had our first satellite ground station parked in Sentosa in 1971. First satellite was also launched back in 1998. So we go way back.
Wow. It shows that Singapore actually has had its eye on the prize for quite some time, right? I think you mentioned the number of companies and individuals in the industry. What's the lay of the land right now?
So today, with 70 or so companies in various parts of the space value chain, Singapore has launched about 30 or so satellites into space to date, with a couple more in the pipeline. Many of them are research-oriented satellites. The vast majority are also indigenously built. Our NTU and NUS have been actually pioneering a lot of space activities. Both are home to satellite research centers that also date back decades.
I had no idea. So it sounds like we're established, but still at quite a nascent stage. Is that right to say?
We're certainly not the furthest along. The area in satellite manufacturing or satellite engineering, I would say that I think we have certain key capabilities that we can call our own.
Is there any example of some cool space technologies that Singapore actually has developed?
Satellite subsystems. That's an area that we contribute and we have invested heavily on. Subsystems means the various things that you equip a satellite with. We are quite good with the electronic stack. We are quite good with the hardware, software pieces. We have companies that harden your electronics. We have companies that provide unique payloads in communications. And these advances are unique to Singapore. One fact that we also have done well over the past years is miniaturization, or making satellites smaller, better.
Because it's important to have them, low weight and...
That's right. Absolutely, right? So the whole democratization of space over the past 2 decades, what Elon Musk has done, among many other new space actors, this has all changed the game of space. So going smaller, more compact, these are things that we do quite well, right? And I think we can do more with less. It's a function of making sure that we are sharper with our resources.
So we want Singapore to be a hub for space tech, right? How are we going to achieve that? I mean, we don't really have rockets or anything like that.
So I think for Singapore, we have to play to our natural strengths. Space actually to me is more of an enabler for making sure that we retain this hub status, be it in maritime or aviation. The hub status really depends on how advanced your technology is to ensure that you're efficient and effective in whatever you do. For example, to ensure that you have clear maritime and aviation efficiencies, communications is very important. And that is provided by satellites.
And that's the ability to track the ship and say this ship is from where and what it does. And
yes, and even provide voice, talking to vessels, talking to people, providing connectivity on cruise liners and beyond. So the more efficient you get, the more connected you are. That's where then you become a very key node within the global ecosystem.
But if you look at other countries like, say, I don't know, India, they got a huge space industry. They also literally reaching for the stars. We can't do that in Singapore. But what can Singapore do to boost its space industry?
Certainly, compared to larger tier 1 spacefaring nations, larger land masses, larger domestic markets, it's really not apple to apple. Singapore today in the space sector, we may not have the pure space sector yet, but we do have key ingredients that make up a thriving space sector. For example, you do need a good aerospace sector. That ancillary support, the technologies around that, is a natural extension.
Because it helps that if you want to do space stuff, all the companies that do it already here, right?
Absolutely. We have an established base of OEMs, MRO companies, maintenance, repair, overhaul, ecosystem that actually can support potential spacecraft development and design.
What other sectors or industries are related to space? Sounds like, robotics, semiconductors, things like that. What else?
A few of these areas. Precision engineering is very important. You can imagine for all space programs, you do need heavy precision capabilities that cuts across our satellite buses, our satellite development design missions. All of these requires that as a base load. You also do need a very strong semiconductor electronics sector as well. Satellite engineering is very heavy on electronics and electrical engineering capabilities.
Playing the Singapore strengths, right?
That's right.
Now, we're going to go for our break, but when we come back, we're going to talk more about looking at the Earth from afar and also what's in store for the space industry in the future. Maybe our own rocket launch site, perhaps, or is that a stretch? That's all after break.
Money Hacks by the Business Times delivers useful financial tips every Monday. Subscribe to the playlists in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But if watching is your thing, we've got you covered. Subscribe to the Money Hacks playlist in the podcast tab of BT's YouTube channel and watch as Howie Lim gets the inside scoop on the best money hacks. Subscribe and watch today.
And now, back to TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Welcome back to TransportBT. We're with the Executive Director of Singapore's own Office for Space Technology and Industry, Jonathan Hung. So we're talking about space's benefits to businesses and everyday operations on the ground. Are there any other examples of that? We can use satellites to monitor climate change and disasters and things like that.
Oh, very much so. Earth observation is actually at the heart of many of our satellite missions.
Actually, what is Earth observation? I hear the term thrown around a lot. What does it mean?
Think of it as sticking a camera up in space and taking photos of the Earth.
That's a great way of saying it. Okay.
Yeah, effectively, an analogy of a good satellite, I guess, is a really high resolution camera. And people actually have done that. They've flown iPhones in space, and okay, it's not perfect, but you get what you get. Now, the pictures is one thing. And honestly, today, that kind of raw data is quite easy and commonplace to get as well. The key is actually the analysis of the data. What the picture can tell you and me.
Earlier, I think was it in February that Singapore launched the Earth Observation Initiative. Could you tell us more about that?
So we launched Earth Observation Initiative, or EOI, back in February, together with a network of 15 partners and members. And it really is aimed to utilize remote sensing satellite technology to develop innovative solutions for sustainability and humanitarian challenges across the region.
How does Earth observation help efforts for combating climate change?
Sure. Earth observation doesn't just solve problems at one spot. Many of it is transboundary. Water quality, for example. Food security and food resiliency as well, which is actually tied to climate change. Every degree that you go up, you can lose a percentage of crops, or you could lose crop yield. So things like this is where Earth observation data provides a good benchmark, but also you can measure data across time and space, literally.
But that's actually very heartening because I had no idea you could apply EO data to such a wide range of things. And earlier in the year, I think February, we were at the Global Space Technology Convention and Exhibition, which is where I first found about you guys. And there was quite a lot of interesting exhibits there. What do you think are the most exciting parts of space that really will move in the next few years?
We're unlocking a lot of AI from space, for example. Some of the companies are demonstrating very unique applications, faster onboard processing power. It's a lot of power, computing power that we see. Think of it as everybody is trying to find the next generation mobile phone that can do everything, right? So things are getting faster, more compact. Every year, right? The whole thing is being revolutionized. So the same thing for satellites. Super CPU in space, right? Or GPU actually today. So these are things that will change the game. Potentially, you could go further for space exploration.
Further? Mars.
Well, I mean, that's already achieved. Yeah, so we can go even further than that. You can have better communications with lower latency that allows you to communicate faster. And whatever you can do in space can certainly apply to terrestrial requirements as well.
So there's quite a lot of technology transfer that might happen.
Yes. In fact, interestingly, many unique space capabilities were tech transferred and diffused to what we have today. For example, the solar panel, right?
Oh, they were first on spacecraft.
That's correct, because we couldn't keep putting tons of batteries on satellites. So they had to find a way to collect power, and that's where the panels came about.
Not all of them can afford the atomic decay battery.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
Kind of thing.
It's a function of weight, so you have to be quite innovative. Again, back to the first point about how we dealt with space in Singapore.
So let's put on our Michael Bay hats for a while. And what do you think are more like far-flung ideas in the future that could come? Could Singapore have its own launch system, or make Pulau Tekong a Cape Canaveral or something?
I don't know whether the army will allow us.
Yeah, I know that will happen, but
it'll be inspiring for sure. And I'll be the first to say that we are always on the lookout for inspirational missions. We may be land constrained. We can't immediately do launches tomorrow, but participating in space exploration missions is not far-fetched. We may not have our own dedicated exploration mission from Singapore, but it certainly doesn't preclude our companies or ourselves with countries that are working on interplanetary missions that we can latch onto. Example, in space robotics. A lot of things will be automated, a lot of things will be unmanned as you go further first. Having advanced communications to ensure you could communicate with whatever you send up, whether unmanned probes or drones. So these are areas that we can contribute.
Well, that sounds really interesting. I mean, maybe Singapore could be part of a ASEAN space program.
Well, interestingly, a lot of our neighbors, together with ourselves, we work very closely with our ASEAN friends to identify challenges. The Earth Observation Initiative that we mentioned was one of them. It's because, unfortunately, we do have disasters in our region.
And getting more common.
That's right. So things where satellites can be deployed, we work closely in that respect.
Okay, so I've saved the fun question for the end, John. What's your favorite space-related movie or book?
I have quite a few
Please don't say
movies.
Armageddon. Sorry, go on.
That's not bad. Not my favorite, but I have to admit I watched it more than once. But I guess in the early days, one of my favorite movies was Stargate. The original movie in 1994.
Right,
Kurt Russell.
right.
It clearly mirrors actually what we are doing today in Austin, actually what myself as well. You have a select group of individuals that come together, all walks of life, different skills. You need all these players, and you're in uncharted territory, right? You have to break new ground. And I was just telling the team earlier, there's always something every week. Think of it as just walking through that Stargate every day. And some days are good.
That does sound very fulfilling, actually. I mean, how many people can say they got Stargate kind of in real life as their day job, right?
Right. So the gate is my door at my house. I walk out that door. It's not so exciting. Don't have to push so many buttons. But really, I think that's how it is in Austin today, and actually generally in the space sector where you're really at the forefront.
So thanks a lot, John, for the peek into the space industry in Singapore. I only have one request though. If Singapore ever gets a launch site, can you put it at Hougang?
Oh, sure.
So you can say, Hougang, we have no problem. Okay. Okay, lame joke
No
over.
worries.
Thanks, John. That was Jonathan Hung, the Executive Director of OSTIN, the Space Office of Singapore. So that's it for Transport BT this time. Next week, BT Correspondents will be back with an all-new episode on property with our senior correspondent, Leslie Yee. So please tune in. And if you have any thoughts or questions or suggestions for the show, email us at btpodcasts@sph.com.sg. I'm Derryn Wong. As always, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts. Or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.